Have you ever really thought about that? You give a book a shove across the table, you kick a soccer ball across the grass, or you just stop pedaling your bike. No matter what, sooner or later, everything just grinds to a halt. So why is that? What's this invisible force that's always hitting the brakes?
Okay, so here's where it gets interesting. The exact same force that stops that book from sliding forever is also the only reason you can even walk in the first place. But if you take that force away, with the classic banana peel, well, suddenly you can't stand at all. It's a force that both stops us and helps us go. Kind of weird, right?
So today, we are diving deep and getting to know the one character responsible for all this drama. Welcome to our explainer on friction, the force that's basically in a constant grudge match with, well, everything that moves.
To really get what our main character is all about, we've got to go undercover. We need to see what it's really made of. So let's unmask the true culprit behind friction.
I want you to picture a perfectly polished table, or maybe a sheet of glass, or even a brand new bowling ball. They look and feel perfectly smooth, don't they? Well, I'm here to tell you, they're not. They're all hiding a very, very rough secret.
And this is where we peel back that lie. If we could just zoom in, way in, we'd see that every single surface is actually this rugged landscape of tiny little hills and valleys. So when two surfaces touch, their microscopic mountains are literally crashing into each other, locking together like tiny grappling hooks. That interlocking, that is the true source of friction's power.
And boom, that right there gives us our official definition. Friction is simply the force that fights back. It opposes the movement between any two surfaces that are touching. It's this constant battle happening on a totally invisible scale.
But here's the thing. Friction isn't just one simple force. No, it's got different moods, you could even say different personalities, that show up in different situations.
First up, you've got static friction. This is the stubborn one. It's the force you have to fight just to get something to budge. Then there's sliding friction. It's slightly weaker sibling that tries to slow things down once they're already moving. And finally, you've got rolling friction, kind of the lazy one of the bunch, which is by far the weakest of them all.
And this visual just shows it perfectly. Imagine you're pushing a really heavy box. That initial effort, that moment where it feels like it's glued to the floor, that's you fighting against static friction. But once it starts moving, it gets a little easier, right? That's because now you're only dealing with sliding friction. Now put that same box on some wheels, and it's a piece of cake. That's the magic of using rolling to your advantage.
So the most important thing to remember is this. Static friction is always the toughest opponent. The force you need to start something moving is always going to be greater than the force you need to keep it moving. And rolling? Well, rolling is like finding a cheat code to get things moving with barely any effort at all.
Which, of course, brings us to the central conflict in our story. Is friction a hero that makes our world work, or is it a villain that just gets in the way? And the answer is, well, it's both.
I mean, on one hand, friction is our absolute best friend. Those grooves on the bottom of your shoes, they create friction with the ground, giving you the grip you need to walk and run without slipping. But that very same friction is also a foe, constantly grinding away at those soles until they're totally worn out.
Think about this. We use friction to our advantage every time we strike a match. That friction generates just enough heat to cause combustion. But inside our machines, that same process of generating heat is a massive waste of energy, causing parts to overheat and wear down way faster. So you see, it really is a classic double-edged sword. We absolutely need it to write, to stop our cars, to build things, even just to tie our shoes. The world would literally fall apart without it. But at the exact same time, it's constantly working against us, wearing things out and wasting a ton of precious energy.
So if we can't live with it, and we definitely can't live without it, what do? Well, over centuries, humanity has gotten incredibly good at not defeating friction, but taming it.
We've basically learned how to turn the dial on friction, either up or down, depending on what we need. Need more grip? We add rough treads to tires or chalk to a gymnast's hands. Need less resistance? We use lubricants like oil. We polish surfaces to make them super smooth, or we use really clever designs like ball bearings.
And this is just a brilliant example of how we tame friction. Inside a machine, instead of just letting two flat surfaces grind against each other, we put a whole series of tiny little balls between them. This completely swaps that difficult sliding friction for that super easy rolling friction. It's such a simple idea, but it's what makes everything from our bikes to our ceiling fans even possible. We even took a page out of nature's book. You know, birds evolved these streamlined bodies to cut through the air with the least amount of effort. So when we wanted to fly, we pretty much copied that exact same shape for our airplanes. This minimizes air friction, which scientists just call drag, and that saves energy and lets us fly faster.
Okay, so you followed the story of friction all the way from its secret microscopic origins to the ways we control it every day. So now for a final little challenge to see if you've truly befriended this fundamental force.
First question for you. Think back to that heavy box we were pushing. Why exactly is it easier to keep it moving than it is to get it started in the first place? What's really going on at that microscopic level?
And the answer is, it all comes down to time. When the surfaces are just sitting there, those tiny hills and valleys have plenty of time to settle into each other and lock together for a really strong grip. But once they start sliding past each other, they're just kind of skipping over the tops of the mountains. They don't get a chance to interlock deeply, so the grip just isn't as strong. Simple as that.
All right, next challenge. Why is it so much harder to push a heavy box than a light one, even if they're made out of the exact same material?
And again, it all comes back to those hills and valleys. More weight just means the two surfaces are being pressed together with way more force. This literally smashes those microscopic bumps and grooves into each other, creating a much stronger, much deeper interlock that, you guessed it, requires a lot more force to break.
We'll leave you with this final riddle. The answer, of course, is friction. It's the ultimate frenemy, isn't it? A force that's both a helper and a hindrance. It's an invisible but absolutely essential character in the story of, well, everything that happens in our physical world.